The year was 1818, and the morning mist clung to the imposing gates of Ravenscroft Palace like secrets whispered in silk. The Georgian mansion stood as a testament to centuries of aristocratic power, its limestone facade gleaming pale gold in the early dawn light. Towering Corinthian columns flanked the grand entrance, while perfectly manicured gardens stretched endlessly toward the horizon, dotted with marble statues of long-dead nobility who seemed to watch over their domain with eternal vigilance. Lady Margaret Ashworth, the Duchess of Ravenscroft, had awakened before sunrise, as was her custom, her lady's maid Sarah already laying out the day's ensemble. A morning dress of deep emerald silk with intricate pearl buttons, perfectly fitted to her elegant frame. At 35, Margaret possessed the refined beauty that came not from youth alone, but from a lifetime of proper deportment and aristocratic bearing. Her auburn hair was arranged in an elaborate chignon, secured with combs of carved ivory, while her green eyes held the sharp intelligence that had made her one of the most respected figures in London's high society. The Duchess descended the grand marble staircase, her silk slippers making barely a whisper against the cold stone. Oil paintings of her late husband's ancestors gazed down from gilded frames, their stern faces a reminder of the weight of tradition that rested upon her shoulders. The Duke of Ravenscroft had died 3 years prior in a riding accident, leaving Margaret as the sole guardian of the family's vast fortune and political influence. She had worn her widow's weeds for the prescribed period, but now dressed in colors befitting her station, though she had steadfastly refused all offers of remarriage that would strengthen political alliances. As she entered the morning room, decorated with hand-painted Chinese wallpaper and furnished with delicate mahogany pieces, her butler Harrison approached with his characteristic measured pace. Harrison had served the Ravenscroft family for nearly 4 decades, his silver hair and lined face bearing witness to countless secrets and social intrigues. He carried himself with the dignity that befitted his position as the most trusted member of the household staff. "Your Grace," Harrison began, his voice carrying an unusual note of uncertainty, "there has been a most unusual occurrence at the main gate." Margaret paused in the act of pouring her morning tea from the delicate Wedgwood service, noting the hesitation in her butler's typically unflappable demeanor. "What sort of occurrence, Harrison?" "A foundling, Your Grace. An infant, wrapped in what appears to be fine linen, placed upon the very steps of our entrance gate sometime during the night. There was no accompanying note, no explanation, simply." Harrison's voice trailed off as he struggled to find appropriate words for such an unprecedented situation. The teacup remained suspended in Margaret's hand as she processed this information. In all her years as mistress of Ravenscroft Palace, nothing quite so extraordinary had ever occurred. "An infant, you say? A baby?" Her mind raced through the implications of such a discovery. Foundlings were typically left at churches or orphanages, not at the gates of one of England's most powerful ducal estates. "Indeed, Your Grace. The child appears to be healthy, perhaps 3 or 4 months of age. Cook has already prepared a warm milk mixture, and young Annie from the kitchen is tending to the infant in the servants' quarters. However, I felt it necessary to inform you immediately of this development." Margaret set down her teacup with deliberate precision, her mind already working through the complex social and political ramifications. The discovery of an abandoned child at Ravenscroft Palace would undoubtedly become the subject of intense speculation among London's gossip-hungry society matrons. Every detail would be dissected, analyzed, and transformed into scandalous theories that could potentially damage the family's reputation. "Have you examined the infant's clothing and wrappings for any identifying marks or quality that might suggest its origins?" she inquired, moving toward the tall windows that overlooked the estate's perfectly maintained grounds. "The linen is of exceptional quality, Your Grace, far superior to what one might expect for a foundling. The weaving is quite fine, possibly continental in origin. There are no visible markings or embroidery, but the craftsmanship suggests considerable expense." Most curious is a small locket found among the infant's wrappings, though it bears no inscription or identifying characteristics. This detail caused Margaret to turn sharply from her contemplation of the gardens. A locket of quality suggested nobility, or at the very least, significant wealth. The mystery deepened considerably with each piece of information. "Bring me the locket, Harrison, and have the infant brought to the blue morning room. I must examine this situation myself before determining our course of action." As Harrison departed to fulfill her instructions, Margaret found herself drawn to the family portraits that adorned the morning room walls. The faces of previous dukes and duchesses of Ravenscroft seemed to watch her with expressions that ranged from stern disapproval to curious interest. She wondered what counsel her late husband would have offered in such circumstances. The Duke had been a man of decisive action, but even he might have found himself perplexed by such an unusual occurrence. The sound of approaching footsteps announced Harrison's return, accompanied by young Annie, a girl of perhaps 16 who served in the kitchens and possessed a gentle manner with children from her large family in the village. Annie carried a bundle wrapped in soft wool blankets, her face flushed with a mixture of nervousness and excitement at being summoned to the formal reception rooms of the great house. "Place the child on the settee, Annie, and you may remain to assist if needed," Margaret instructed, approaching the small bundle with a mixture of curiosity and caution. As the blankets were carefully folded back, she found herself gazing down at an infant of remarkable beauty. The child possessed delicate features and an unusually calm disposition, as if somehow aware of the gravity of the situation. Dark hair crowned the small head, and when the infant's eyes opened, they revealed in startling shade of deep blue that seemed almost familiar. Harrison extended a small silver locket, its surface engraved with intricate scrollwork, but bearing no monogram or family crest. The piece was clearly valuable, crafted by a skilled jeweler, yet it offered no clues to the child's identity or origins. Margaret examined it carefully, noting the weight and quality of the silver, the precision of the engraving, and the absence of anywhere that might suggest frequent handling. "This is indeed puzzling," she murmured, returning the locket to Harrison's care. "The quality of both the clothing and this jewelry suggests nobility, yet no family of consequence has reported a missing child. The timing and location of this abandonment cannot be coincidental." As if sensing the weight of adult contemplation, the infant made soft sounds that drew Margaret's attention back to the small face. There was something in those blue eyes that stirred a memory she could not quite grasp, a fleeting recognition that vanished the moment she tried to focus upon it. The child's features held a refinement that spoke of aristocratic bloodlines, yet the circumstances of the abandonment suggested scandal or desperation. "Your Grace," Harrison ventured carefully, "if I may be so bold as to suggest, perhaps we should consider contacting the local magistrate or sending inquiries to London regarding missing children of quality families." Margaret considered this suggestion while studying the mysterious infant. Such inquiries would inevitably lead to speculation and gossip that could prove damaging to the Ravenscroft reputation. Yet the alternative of simply delivering the child to local authorities seemed equally problematic, particularly given the obvious quality of the infant's origins. "No, Harrison, I believe discretion is paramount in this matter. For now, we shall care for the child here while conducting our own private investigations. Have Mrs. Pemberton prepare the nursery in the East Wing and arrange for a wet nurse from the village. This matter must remain strictly confidential among the household staff until we can determine the proper course of action." The decision felt both natural and momentous as Margaret gazed down at the foundling who had appeared so mysteriously at their gates. Something deep within her maternal instincts, so long suppressed since her husband's death and her own childlessness, stirred to unexpected life. This child represented not just a mystery to be solved, but perhaps a purpose she had not known she was seeking. As Annie carefully gathered the infant for transport to the nursery, Margaret noticed how the morning light, streaming through the tall windows, seemed to illuminate the small face with an almost ethereal glow. The child's remarkably calm demeanor and those penetrating blue eyes suggested an intelligence that seemed far beyond the few months of life the infant had experienced. "What shall we call the child, Your Grace?" Annie asked softly, clearly enchanted by the beautiful foundling. Margaret paused, considering the weight of naming this mysterious arrival. "Elizabeth," she said finally, the name emerging from some deep instinct she could not explain. "We shall call her Elizabeth, until such time as her true identity can be established." And so began the extraordinary tale of the foundling who had come to be known as Elizabeth, whose very presence at Ravenscroft Palace would set in motion a series of events that would challenge the established order of England's most powerful families and uncover secrets that had been buried for decades in the shadowed corridors of aristocratic power. 3 weeks had passed since the mysterious arrival of the infant Elizabeth at Ravenscroft Palace, and the child had settled into the rhythm of the great house as if she had been born to such surroundings. The nursery in the East Wing had been transformed from a long-in-use space into a haven of comfort and elegance, with hand-painted murals depicting pastoral scenes and furniture crafted from the finest mahogany. Elizabeth had thrived under the care of Mrs. Whitmore, a gentle wet nurse from the village whose own children had grown to maturity and who possessed the patient temperament necessary for caring for such an unusual foundling. Lady Margaret had found herself drawn to the nursery with increasing frequency, often claiming to check on the household arrangements, but in truth finding solace in the presence of the mysterious child. Elizabeth had begun to display a remarkable responsiveness to her surroundings, her deep blue eyes following the movements of adults with an intensity that seemed far beyond her tender age. The infant rarely cried, instead observing the world around her with what appeared to be thoughtful consideration. On this particular morning, as autumn painted the estate's vast gardens in shades of gold and crimson, Margaret was interrupted in her correspondence by Harrison's announcement of an unexpected visitor. "Lord Edmund Thornfield, the Earl of Blackwood, requests an audience, Your Grace. He claims to be conducting inquiries regarding a matter of considerable importance to several noble families." Margaret's fountain pen paused above the letter she had been composing to her sister in Bath. Lord Edmund Thornfield was known throughout London society as a man of impeccable reputation and scholarly pursuits, though she had met him only briefly at various social functions. His sudden appearance at Ravenscroft Palace seemed remarkably coincidental given their current circumstances with the foundling. "Show Lord Thornfield to the library, Harrison. I shall receive him there in 10 minutes. And ensure that Mrs. Whitmore keeps Elizabeth in the nursery until our guest has departed." As she made her way to the library, Margaret's mind raced with possibilities regarding the Earl's visit. Lord Thornfield was approximately 40 years of age, a widower who had lost his wife in childbirth 5 years prior along with their infant son. Since that tragedy, he had devoted himself to scholarly research and had gained recognition for his expertise in genealogical matters concerning England's noble families. If he was conducting inquiries related to missing children or family lineages, his visit could hardly be considered coincidental. The library at Ravenscroft Palace was Margaret's favorite room in the vast mansion, its walls lined floor to ceiling with leather-bound volumes collected over generations. Tall windows provided natural light for reading, while a massive fireplace dominated one wall, its carved mantelpiece displaying family crests and heraldic symbols. Persian carpets in deep jewel tones covered the polished hardwood floors, and comfortable leather chairs invited long hours of scholarly contemplation. Lord Edmund Thornfield rose from his examination of a rare manuscript as Margaret entered, his tall frame unfolding with a natural grace that marked him as a man of noble bearing. His dark hair showed distinguished touches of silver at the temples, while his gray eyes held an intelligence that had made him a respected figure in academic circles. He was dressed in the impeccable style befitting his rank, a perfectly tailored coat of midnight blue wool, pristine white linen, and a cravat knotted with mathematical precision. "Your Grace," he said, offering a bow that perfectly balanced respect with his own elevated social position. "I am grateful for your willingness to receive me without prior notice. I come on a matter that requires the utmost discretion and may be of considerable importance to your family, as well as others in our social circle." Margaret gestured toward the chairs arranged near the fireplace, noting the serious expression that marked Lord Thornfield's usually pleasant features. "Please be seated, Lord Thornfield. Your reputation for scholarly discretion precedes you. How may I be of assistance in your inquiries?" As they settled into the comfortable leather chairs, Margaret observed that the Earl seemed to be choosing his words with unusual care. His gray eyes held a gravity that suggested the matter at hand was of significant consequence, possibly touching upon sensitive areas of noble family history. "Your Grace, I have been commissioned by certain members of the nobility to investigate a series of irregularities that have come to light regarding birth records and family lineages dating back approximately 25 years. These inquiries have led me to examine various circumstances surrounding children who may have been displaced from their proper positions within noble families." Margaret felt her heartbeat quicken, though she maintained her composed exterior. "That sounds like most delicate work, Lord Thornfield. Such matters could have profound implications for inheritance rights and social standing." "Indeed, Your Grace. The investigation began when inconsistencies were discovered in the records of several prominent families, suggesting that certain children may have been substituted, hidden, or otherwise removed from their rightful positions. The pattern suggests a systematic effort to manipulate noble bloodlines for purposes that remain unclear but were undoubtedly motivated by significant financial or political gain." The Earl leaned forward slightly, his expression becoming even more serious. "I have reason to believe that these manipulations may have continued into more recent years, possibly extending to current circumstances. I wonder, Your Grace, if you have encountered any unusual situations that might be related to such activities." Margaret found herself in a precarious position, torn between her desire to protect the foundling Elizabeth and her obligation to assist in what appeared to be a legitimate investigation of significant importance. The timing of Lord Thornfield's visit, so soon after Elizabeth's mysterious appearance, could hardly be coincidental. "What sort of unusual circumstances might be relevant to your investigation?" she asked carefully, neither confirming nor denying any knowledge that might prove relevant. "Reports of foundlings discovered in unusual locations, particularly those showing signs of noble birth or accompanied by items of quality that suggest aristocratic origins. Children abandoned in circumstances that suggest careful planning rather than desperate poverty. Infants whose physical characteristics might indicate noble bloodlines, but who lack the documentation that would typically accompany legitimate births within noble families." Each word seemed to describe Elizabeth's situation with uncomfortable precision. Yet Margaret felt instinctively protective of the mysterious child who had brought such unexpected joy to her previously lonely existence at Ravenscroft Palace. The infant had filled a void in her life that she had not fully recognized until Elizabeth's arrival. "Such discoveries would indeed be significant," Margaret replied diplomatically. "May I inquire about the families that have been affected by these alleged irregularities? Understanding the scope of your investigation might help me determine if I possess any relevant information." Lord Thornfield consulted a small leather notebook, his expression grave. "The families include the Dukes of Pemberton, the Earls of Sussex, the Marquises of Worthington, and several others of similar standing. In each case, legitimate heirs appear to have been replaced with substitutes, while the true heirs have vanished without explanation. The financial implications are staggering, as are the potential disruptions to the established social order." As he spoke, Margaret noticed that his gray eyes held a depth of pain that suggested personal investment in these investigations beyond mere scholarly interest. The loss of his own wife and child had clearly affected him profoundly, perhaps making him particularly sensitive to cases involving displaced or missing children. The pattern suggests, he continued, that someone with intimate knowledge of noble family structures and access to the highest levels of society has been orchestrating these substitutions for decades. The precision and success of these operations indicate both substantial resources and connections within the aristocratic establishment itself. Margaret rose and moved toward one of the tall windows, ostensibly to admire the autumn foliage, but actually to compose her thoughts regarding this troubling revelation. If Lord Thornfield's investigation was accurate, Elizabeth's appearance at Ravenscroft Palace might be connected to a much larger conspiracy that had already affected numerous noble families. "Lord Thornfield," she said finally, turning back to face him, "your investigation raises disturbing possibilities. If such manipulations have indeed occurred, the perpetrators must be brought to justice, and the affected families must have their legitimate rights restored. However, I must also consider the welfare of any innocent children who might become involved in such complex proceedings." The Earl's expression softened slightly, revealing the compassionate nature that lay beneath his scholarly demeanor. "Your Grace, I assure you that my primary concern is for justice and the protection of innocent parties. Any children affected by these circumstances would be treated with the utmost care and consideration for their welfare, regardless of the complex legal and social implications that might arise." His words carried a sincerity that helped alleviate some of Margaret's concerns, though she remained cautious about revealing Elizabeth's presence at the palace. The foundling had become precious to her in ways she had not anticipated, and the thought of losing the child to legal proceedings or restoration to unknown family members filled her with unexpected anguish. "If I were to encounter any circumstances that might be relevant to your investigation," Margaret said carefully, "what would be the appropriate course of action? How might such situations be handled to ensure the best interests of all parties involved?" Lord Thornfield's response revealed both his legal expertise and his personal understanding of the emotional complexities involved. Any such discovery should be reported confidentially to allow for proper investigation. The child's immediate welfare would be the primary consideration, followed by careful research to establish true parentage and legitimate inheritance rights. The process would be conducted with absolute discretion to protect all parties from unnecessary scandal or social disruption. As their conversation continued, Margaret found herself increasingly impressed by Lord Thornfield's combination of intellectual rigor and human compassion. His approach to these sensitive matters suggested both professional competence and personal integrity that made him a trustworthy figure in such delicate circumstances. The Earl's visit concluded with an exchange of contact information and his promise to keep Margaret informed of any developments in his investigation that might affect noble families in their region. As Harrison escorted him from the library, Margaret remained by the window, contemplating the implications of their conversation for Elizabeth's future and her own growing attachment to the mysterious foundling. Unknown to Margaret, Lord Thornfield paused at his carriage to study the imposing facade of Ravenscroft Palace with thoughtful consideration. His scholarly instincts suggested that this visit had provided valuable information, though the full significance remained to be determined through further investigation. The Duchess's careful responses had indicated knowledge she was not yet prepared to share, but her obvious integrity suggested that she would ultimately choose the path that best served justice and the welfare of any innocent parties involved. As his carriage departed through the palace gates, both Margaret and Edmund remained unaware that their lives had become irrevocably intertwined through their mutual concern for a mysterious foundling whose very existence would challenge everything they believed about family, duty, and the true meaning of noble heritage. The following weeks brought the first hints of winter to the English countryside, with frost painting delicate patterns on the windows of Ravenscroft Palace and the great fireplaces requiring constant attention to ward off the seasonal chill. Elizabeth had grown noticeably during her 2 months in residence, her bright eyes now following every movement with alert intelligence, while her gentle nature had endeared her to every member of the household staff. Margaret found that her daily routine had unconsciously reorganized itself around visits to the nursery, where she spent increasing amounts of time reading to the infant or simply enjoying the peaceful contentment that seemed to radiate from the mysterious child. On this particular morning, as snow began to dust the perfectly manicured gardens, Margaret was surprised by Harrison's announcement that Lord Thornfield had returned, requesting another private audience on matters related to his ongoing investigation. His previous visit had left her with mixed emotions of curiosity and concern, particularly regarding Elizabeth's potential connection to the conspiracy he had described. Show Lord Thornfield to the morning room this time, Harrison. The library feels rather formal for what I suspect may be a more personal conversation. And please ask Mrs. Pemberton to prepare refreshments suitable for an extended discussion. As she made her way to the morning room, Margaret noticed that her anticipation of seeing Lord Thornfield again carried emotions beyond mere curiosity about his investigation. Their previous conversation had revealed a man of depth and compassion beneath his scholarly exterior, and she had found herself thinking of their discussion more frequently than purely professional interest would warrant. The morning room, with its cheerful yellow silk wall coverings and collection of delicate porcelain figurines, provided a more intimate setting than the imposing library. Tall windows offered views of the snow-covered gardens, while a smaller fireplace created an atmosphere of comfortable warmth. Margaret had chosen her ensemble with particular care, a day dress of deep blue wool that complemented her auburn hair, with a cashmere shawl draped elegantly over her shoulders. Lord Thornfield appeared more relaxed during this second visit, though his expression retained the serious undertones that had marked their previous meeting. His traveling coat bore evidence of the winter weather, and his cheeks showed the flush that came from riding through the crisp morning air. As he settled into the chair opposite Margaret's position near the fireplace, she noticed that his gray eyes held a warmth that had not been evident during their more formal initial encounter. "Your Grace, I'm grateful once again for your willingness to receive me. My investigation has progressed significantly since our last meeting, and I believe the information I have uncovered may be of particular relevance to your household." Margaret felt her pulse quicken, though she maintained her composed exterior. "Please, share whatever information you believe may be pertinent. Your previous visit raised questions that have occupied my thoughts considerably." Lord Thornfield withdrew a leather portfolio from his coat and extracted several documents, arranging them carefully on the small table between their chairs. "My research has uncovered evidence of a systematic conspiracy that operated for nearly 3 decades, orchestrated by someone with intimate access to the most powerful families in England. The scheme involved the substitution of legitimate heirs with foundlings, allowing the conspirator to manipulate inheritance patterns for substantial financial gain." As he spoke, Margaret noticed that his hands bore the slight tremor that often accompanied intense scholarly work, suggesting that his investigation had required considerable personal investment of time and energy. His dedication to uncovering the truth spoke well of his character and professional integrity. The conspiracy appears to have been masterminded by Lady Constance Fairfax, the late Countess of Ravenswood, who served as a lady-in-waiting to several duchesses and maintained close relationships with noble families throughout London society. Her position provided access to birth announcements, family secrets, and the private affairs of the aristocracy that would have been essential for such elaborate deceptions. Margaret's breath caught at this revelation. Lady Constance Fairfax had indeed been a prominent figure in London society during the previous generation, known for her beauty, intelligence, and remarkable ability to maintain friendships across political and social boundaries. Her sudden death 5 years prior had been attributed to a fever, though Margaret now wondered if other circumstances might have been involved. Lady Constance died without revealing the locations of the displaced children or the identities of the substitute heirs who had been placed in noble households. My investigation suggests that several of these substitutions may have occurred within the past year, indicating that her network of conspirators continued operating even after her death. Lord Thornfield's next words struck directly at Margaret's growing fears regarding Elizabeth's origins. "I have discovered evidence suggesting that a child of royal blood was removed from the palace approximately 4 months ago, replaced with a substitute to conceal a scandal that could have threatened the stability of the monarchy itself. The legitimate child was reportedly placed with trusted associates until suitable permanent arrangements could be made." The implications of this revelation caused Margaret to rise abruptly and move toward the windows, her mind racing with the possible connections to Elizabeth's mysterious appearance at their gates. The timing aligned perfectly with the infant's estimated age, while the quality of her clothing and the silver locket suggested origins at the highest levels of society. "Your Grace," Lord Thornfield continued gently, "I believe you may have encountered this missing child. My investigation has led me to conclude that the infant was placed at Ravenscroft Palace because of your family's reputation for discretion and your personal character, which would ensure proper care for such a precious foundling." Margaret turned from the window to meet his steady gray gaze, recognizing that further deception would be both futile and inappropriate given the gravity of the situation. "There is indeed a foundling in my care, Lord Thornfield, an infant of remarkable beauty and intelligence who appeared at our gates without explanation or identification. I have grown attached to the child and have been reluctant to involve outside authorities until I could better understand the circumstances." The relief that crossed Lord Thornfield's features suggested that he had hoped for this confirmation while dreading the possibility that the trail might lead to a dead end. "Your Grace, your instincts to protect the child were entirely appropriate. The infant you are caring for is Princess Charlotte Victoria, the legitimate daughter of Prince Regent George and Maria Fitzherbert, whose secret marriage was never officially recognized due to the political implications." This revelation struck Margaret with the force of a physical blow. The child she had come to love as Elizabeth was actually a princess of royal blood, whose very existence could alter the succession to the English throne. The foundling who had brought such joy to her lonely life was far beyond her social reach, destined for a future that would inevitably separate them. The princess was removed from the palace to prevent a scandal that could have destabilized the government. Lord Thornfield explained compassionately, clearly recognizing the emotional impact of his revelation. "However, my investigation has revealed that the substitution was discovered by loyal palace guards who managed to save the legitimate princess while allowing the conspirators to believe their plan had succeeded." Margaret sank back in her chair, overwhelmed by the magnitude of these revelations and their implications for Elizabeth's future. What must be done now? Surely the princess must be restored to her rightful position, regardless of the political complications that might arise. Lord Thornfield's expression grew thoughtful as he considered the complex legal and political ramifications. The situation requires delicate handling to protect both the princess's welfare and the stability of the monarchy. Simply returning her to the palace without proper preparation could expose her to renewed danger from surviving members of the conspiracy. As they discussed the various options and implications, Margaret found herself increasingly impressed by Lord Thornfield's compassionate approach to such a complex situation. His concern for Elizabeth's welfare seemed genuine, while his understanding of the emotional bonds that had developed made him a trustworthy advocate for the child's best interests. "Your Grace," he said finally, "I believe the most appropriate course would be to allow the princess to remain in your care while we work to ensure her safety and establish proper legal recognition of her status. Your obvious devotion to her welfare makes you an ideal guardian during this transitional period." This unexpected proposal offered hope that Margaret might not lose the child who had become so precious to her, while also ensuring that Elizabeth would receive the recognition and protection befitting her royal heritage. The arrangement would require careful negotiation with palace authorities, but Lord Thornfield's expertise and connections made such an outcome possible. As their conversation continued into the afternoon, Margaret began to recognize that her growing appreciation for Lord Thornfield extended beyond gratitude for his assistance with Elizabeth's situation. His combination of intellectual brilliance, compassionate nature, and genuine integrity created an attraction that she had not experienced since her husband's death. The widower Earl seemed similarly affected by their extended interactions, his formal demeanor gradually giving way to warmth that suggested personal interest beyond their shared concern for the princess. The day concluded with Lord Thornfield's promise to begin immediate negotiations with palace authorities regarding Elizabeth's future, while Margaret committed to maintaining the child's safety and concealing her true identity until proper arrangements could be finalized. Neither mentioned the growing personal connection that had developed between them, but both recognized that their lives had become intertwined in ways that extended far beyond their mutual concern for a mysterious foundling who had turned out to be a princess of England. As Lord Thornfield's carriage disappeared into the winter twilight, Margaret returned to the nursery, where Elizabeth lay sleeping peacefully in her elaborate crib. The child's serene beauty seemed somehow enhanced by the knowledge of her royal heritage, while her gentle nature suggested the noble character that would serve her well in whatever future awaited. Margaret whispered a prayer of gratitude for the privilege of caring for such a precious child, while hoping that the coming weeks would bring solutions that could preserve both Elizabeth's welfare and their own growing happiness. Winter had settled over the English countryside with unusual severity, transforming Ravenscroft Palace into a crystalline wonderland where icicles hung like jeweled chandeliers from every eave and the ancient oaks stood sentinel in their mantles of pristine snow. The harsh weather had effectively isolated the estate from casual visitors, creating an atmosphere of intimate seclusion that seemed to intensify the emotions developing between its inhabitants. Elizabeth, now 5 months old, had grown into an infant of extraordinary beauty whose royal heritage seemed to manifest itself in every graceful gesture and intelligent expression. Margaret had spent the morning in the nursery, reading aloud from volumes of poetry, while Elizabeth listened with a remarkable attention that continued to astonish everyone who encountered the child. The princess's development progressed at an exceptional pace, her bright eyes following complex movements and her small hands reaching toward objects with deliberate purpose that suggested unusual cognitive abilities. Mrs. Whitmore, the devoted wet nurse, often remarked that in her 40 years of caring for children, she had never encountered an infant who possessed such natural dignity and awareness. The peaceful routine was interrupted by Harrison's announcement that Lord Thornfield had arrived with urgent news regarding his negotiations with palace authorities. The butler's expression carried a gravity that suggested significant developments, while the Earl's unexpected arrival during such severe weather indicated matters of considerable importance. Margaret hurried to the library, where she found Lord Thornfield warming himself before the massive fireplace, his dark coat bearing evidence of his difficult journey through the snow-covered countryside. His usually impeccable appearance showed signs of haste and concern, while his gray eyes held an intensity that immediately commanded her attention. "Your Grace," he began without preamble, "I bring news that will require immediate decisions regarding Princess Charlotte Victoria's future. My negotiations with palace authorities have revealed complications that threaten both her safety and our ability to maintain the current arrangements." Margaret settled into her favorite chair, steeling herself for revelations that might shatter the peaceful interlude they had enjoyed. "What sort of complications?" Surely the palace recognizes their obligation to protect the princess and acknowledge her legitimate rights. Lord Thornfield's expression grew grave as he consulted his leather portfolio. "The surviving members of Lady Constance's conspiracy have learned of my investigation and are taking desperate measures to prevent exposure of their decades-long criminal enterprise. They have influential allies within the palace who are working to discredit my research and suppress evidence of the princess's true identity." The implications of this revelation sent a chill through Margaret that had nothing to do with the winter weather outside. Elizabeth's safety depended upon maintaining secrecy regarding her location and identity. Yet the very people charged with protecting royal family members were potentially compromised by corrupt influences. Furthermore, Lord Thornfield continued, I have discovered that the substitute child placed in the palace possesses a remarkable physical resemblance to the true princess, suggesting that the conspiracy specifically sought foundlings who could serve as convincing replacements. This indicates a level of planning and resources that extends far beyond what we initially suspected. Margaret rose and began pacing before the fireplace, her mind working through the complex implications of this information. Are you suggesting that Elizabeth, Princess Charlotte Victoria, remains in danger even here at Ravenscroft Palace? I fear that our location may become known to the conspirators if my investigation continues openly. They have already attempted to discredit my research through influential contacts in London society, and it is only a matter of time before they discover the princess's whereabouts through systematic investigation of my recent activities. The thought of losing Elizabeth to dangerous enemies or corrupt palace officials filled Margaret with a fierce protectiveness that surprised her with its intensity. The child had become the center of her existence, bringing joy and purpose to days that had previously been marked by elegant loneliness and social obligation. Lord Thornfield moved closer, his voice dropping to a more intimate tone. Your Grace, I have developed a proposal that might protect both the princess and preserve the happiness that I believe has developed here at Ravenscroft Palace. However, the plan would require considerable trust and personal commitment from both of us. Margaret paused in her pacing to study his expression, noting the way his formal demeanor had given way to something more personal and vulnerable. The weeks of working together to protect Elizabeth had created bonds that extended beyond their shared concern for the child's welfare. I am prepared to consider any proposal that ensures Elizabeth's safety and well-being, she replied, though her heart began to beat more rapidly as she sensed the direction of his thoughts. The most effective protection for the princess would be her adoption into a family whose social position provides both security and legitimacy, while removing her from the immediate reach of palace intrigue. A family created through marriage between individuals whose combined resources and influence could safeguard her future while providing the loving environment she deserves. Margaret's breath caught as she realized the full implication of his carefully chosen words. Lord Thornfield was proposing marriage, not merely as a solution to their practical difficulties, but as a formalization of the emotional connection that had developed between them during their weeks of shared purpose and growing affection. Edmund, she whispered, using his given name for the first time, are you suggesting? He moved closer, taking her hands in his with gentle reverence. Margaret, I am proposing marriage between us, not simply as a means of protecting Princess Charlotte Victoria, but because these weeks of knowing you have shown me that love can bloom again even in hearts that have been scarred by loss. You have brought light to my scholarly solitude, while your devotion to Elizabeth has revealed the depth of your compassionate nature. The warmth in his gray eyes spoke of emotions that had been carefully controlled during their previous interactions, while the slight tremor in his voice revealed the vulnerability of a man who had risked his heart again after years of protective isolation. Margaret found herself drawn to the sincerity of his declaration and the promise of companionship with someone who shared her values and understood her growing devotion to the princess. You have become precious to me as well, Edmund, she admitted, allowing herself to acknowledge feelings that had been developing gradually throughout their shared adventure. Your integrity and compassion have impressed me beyond mere professional admiration, while your dedication to protecting Elizabeth has shown me the kind of man you truly are. His response was to draw her gently into his arms, their embrace conveying years of loneliness that had found resolution in unexpected love. The library, with its walls of ancient wisdom and generations of family history, seemed to witness their declaration with approval, while the snow continued to fall outside the tall windows like nature's blessing upon their union. As my wife, You would become the Countess of Blackwood, with all the legal protections and social influence that position provides, Edmund explained softly. Elizabeth could be formally adopted as our daughter, giving her the legal status and family connections necessary to protect her from future threats while ensuring her access to the best education and social opportunities. Margaret considered the practical brilliance of this solution, which would transform their current precarious situation into a legally secure arrangement that served everyone's best interests. The adoption would provide Elizabeth with immediate legitimacy while placing her beyond the reach of palace conspirators who might seek to use her for their own purposes. Precisely, Edmund confirmed. Our combined wealth and social connections would create an impenetrable defense around her, while our genuine love would provide the nurturing environment essential for her proper development. She would grow up knowing she is cherished and protected, regardless of the complex circumstances surrounding her birth. As they discussed the practical arrangement for their marriage and Elizabeth's adoption, Margaret marveled at how naturally their individual lives seemed to merge into a unified vision of family happiness. Edmund's scholarly pursuits complemented her social skills and estate management experience, while their shared values and growing love promised a partnership that would benefit all three members of their proposed family. There is one additional consideration, Edmund said, his expression growing serious again. My investigation has revealed that Princess Charlotte Victoria possesses a birthmark that definitively proves her royal heritage. When she reaches maturity, she will have the legal right to claim recognition of her true parentage and legitimate status in the royal succession. This revelation added another layer of complexity to their long-term planning. Though Margaret felt confident that their love and guidance would prepare Elizabeth to handle such momentous decisions with wisdom and grace. We must ensure that she grows up with full knowledge of her heritage while also developing the strength and judgment necessary to navigate such complex political situations. Their conversation continued throughout the afternoon, encompassing everything from wedding arrangements to educational plans for Elizabeth's future. By evening, they had outlined a comprehensive strategy that would transform their current crisis into the foundation for a happy and secure family life, while providing Princess Charlotte Victoria with the protection and opportunities befitting her royal heritage. As Edmund prepared to depart through the continuing snowstorm, their engagement was sealed with promises of eternal devotion and shared commitment to the precious child who had brought them together. The following weeks would bring the legal formalities of marriage and adoption, but the essential bonds of love and family had already been established in the warmth of the library at Ravenscroft Palace, where three lives had converged to create something beautiful and enduring from the mysteries of the past. The harsh winter had given way to an early spring that painted the grounds of Ravenscroft Palace in delicate shades of green and gold, while Elizabeth approached her first birthday with a remarkable development that continued to astonish everyone who encountered the princess. The past months had been filled with preparations for Margaret and Edmund's wedding, scheduled for late April, along with the legal proceedings necessary to formalize Elizabeth's adoption. The child had grown into a toddler of extraordinary beauty and intelligence, her royal heritage manifesting itself in natural grace and an almost intuitive understanding of proper deportment. Margaret had spent the morning in consultation with Mrs. Pemberton regarding final arrangements for the wedding ceremony, which would be held in the estate's private chapel with only immediate family and closest friends in attendance. The intimate nature of the celebration reflected both their desire for privacy and the need to maintain discretion regarding Elizabeth's true identity until legal protections were firmly in place. The peaceful atmosphere was shattered by Harrison's urgent announcement that a delegation from London had arrived unexpectedly, demanding immediate audience with the Duchess on matters relating to national security. The butler's usually composed demeanor showed signs of considerable alarm, while his choice of words suggested visitors of significant authority and threatening purpose. Margaret hurried to the main drawing room, where she found three stern-faced gentlemen in dark coats, who carried themselves with the unmistakable bearing of government officials. Their leader, a tall man with silver hair and calculating eyes, stepped forward with a perfunctory bow that barely acknowledged her social rank. "Your Grace, I am Sir Reginald Blackthorne, representing certain interests within His Majesty's government. We have come regarding a matter of utmost gravity that concerns the security of the realm and requires your immediate cooperation." The formal tone and implied threat in his words sent alarm bells through Margaret's mind, particularly given the timing of their arrival, so close to her wedding and Elizabeth's adoption proceedings. The delegation's composition and authoritative manner suggested connections to the highest levels of government, possibly including the conspirators Edmund had identified within palace circles. "Gentlemen, you are welcome at Ravenscroft Palace, though I confess puzzlement regarding any matters that might relate to national security. How may I be of assistance to His Majesty's representatives?" Sir Reginald's response revealed the true purpose of their visit with chilling directness. "Your Grace, we have reliable information that you are harboring a child whose parentage could create significant complications for the stability of the monarchy. We are authorized to conduct a thorough search of these premises and to remove any individuals whose presence might threaten the established order." Margaret's blood ran cold as she realized that the conspiracy Edmund had uncovered had somehow learned of Elizabeth's location despite their careful precautions. The authority these men claimed suggested either legitimate government concern or corruption that extended to the highest levels of power. "I must protest such accusations and demand to see proper documentation of your authority to make such extraordinary claims," she replied with all the dignity her ducal rank could command. "Ravenscroft Palace has always been loyal to the crown, and I will not tolerate unfounded allegations or unauthorized searches of my property." The second member of the delegation, a younger man with cold eyes and predatory bearing, stepped forward with barely concealed menace. "Your Grace, we are prepared to conduct our investigation with or without your cooperation. The child in question poses a threat to national stability that supersedes normal considerations of privacy or social rank." Before Margaret could respond to this brazen threat, the drawing room doors burst open to admit Edmund, whose usually scholarly demeanor had been replaced by barely controlled fury. His arrival brought immediate tension to the confrontation, while his obvious familiarity with the government delegation suggested previous encounters that had not gone well. "Sir Reginald," Edmund said with icy formality, "I should have expected your involvement in this harassment of innocent parties. Your pattern of protecting corrupt interests while intimidating honest citizens has become quite predictable." The government official's expression hardened at Edmund's challenge. "Lord Thornfield, your interference in matters beyond your authority has already caused considerable difficulty. I strongly advise you to withdraw from this situation before your actions result in consequences you will regret." Edmund moved protectively closer to Margaret, his presence providing strength and support in the face of such blatant intimidation. "My authority derives from my commitment to justice and the protection of innocent children from corrupt officials who abuse their positions for personal gain." The confrontation escalated as Sir Reginald produced official-looking documents that purported to authorize the search and seizure of any individuals deemed threats to national security. However, Edmund's expertise in legal matters allowed him to identify several procedural irregularities that suggested the delegation's authority might not be as comprehensive as they claimed. "These documents lack proper seals and signatures," Edmund observed, examining the papers with scholarly precision. "Furthermore, the legal language suggests they were prepared hastily by individuals unfamiliar with proper governmental procedures. I believe we are dealing with fraudulent authority designed to intimidate rather than legitimate legal process." This challenge to their credentials provoked angry exchanges that revealed the true nature of the delegation's mission. Sir Reginald and his associates were indeed representatives of the conspiracy Edmund had been investigating, using their connections within government circles to pursue their own agenda, while claiming official authorization. The situation reached a critical point when a youngest member of the delegation attempted to force his way toward the interior of the palace, clearly intending to search for Elizabeth regardless of legal niceties. His action prompted immediate resistance from the palace staff, led by the loyal Harrison, whose protective instincts had been aroused by threats to his beloved mistress and the infant who had brought such joy to the household. The confrontation might have escalated to violence had it not been interrupted by the arrival of another carriage, this one bearing the authentic seals of royal authority. The newcomer proved to be Sir William Pembroke, a genuine representative of His Majesty's government, whose presence immediately transformed the dynamics of the situation. Sir Reginald, Sir William announced with unmistakable authority, "You and your associates are ordered to withdraw immediately. Your unauthorized activities have been discovered, and warrants for your arrest will be issued upon your return to London." The exposure of the fraudulent delegation as members of the conspiracy created immediate panic among Sir Reginald's group, who attempted to flee but found their escape blocked by Sir William's armed escorts. The arrest of these corrupt officials represented a significant victory in Edmund's investigation, while ensuring Elizabeth's immediate safety from their schemes. Sir William's revelation that the true government had been monitoring the conspiracy's activities provided reassurance that legitimate authorities were committed to protecting Princess Charlotte Victoria while bringing her enemies to justice. However, his subsequent disclosure that her royal parentage had been officially acknowledged created new challenges regarding her future status and custody arrangements. "Your Grace, Lord Thornfield," Sir William addressed them formally. "His Majesty has been informed of Princess Charlotte Victoria's location and the exemplary care she has received at Ravenscroft Palace. However, the Crown must now consider appropriate arrangements for her future that balance her welfare with the constitutional implications of her legitimate royal status." This development threatened to separate Elizabeth from the only family she had known, despite the obviously beneficial effects of Margaret and Edmund's devoted care. The princess had thrived under their protection, developing into a remarkable child whose intelligence and grace promised a bright future regardless of the complex circumstances surrounding her birth. Edmund's response demonstrated both his legal expertise and his passionate commitment to Elizabeth's welfare. "Sir William, I submit that the princess's best interests are served by maintaining her current living arrangements while providing formal recognition of her status. Our upcoming marriage and adoption proceedings would create a legally secure family unit while preserving the relationships that have fostered her exceptional development." Margaret added her own plea for consideration of Elizabeth's emotional needs and the bonds of love that had developed over nearly a year of devoted care. "The princess has known no other family than ours, Sir William. Surely her welfare must be the primary consideration in any decisions regarding her future." Sir William's thoughtful response suggested genuine concern for balancing royal obligations with human compassion. Their Majesties recognize the exceptional care Princess Charlotte Victoria has received and the obvious benefits of maintaining stability in her living arrangements. However, the constitutional implications of acknowledging a legitimate royal heir require careful consideration of precedent and long-term consequences. The day concluded with agreements for continued negotiations regarding Elizabeth's future, while the arrest of Sir Reginald's conspiracy ensured her immediate safety from corrupt enemies. Margaret and Edmund's wedding would proceed as planned, with royal blessing for their union, even as discussions continued regarding the princess's ultimate status and custody arrangements. As evening fell over Ravenscroft Palace, the three members of their chosen family gathered in the nursery, where Elizabeth played contentedly with toys that reflected her developing intelligence and natural grace. Whatever challenges the future might bring, their love for each other and their commitment to the precious child's welfare would guide them through the complex negotiations ahead, secure in the knowledge that truth and justice had prevailed over corruption and conspiracy. Spring had transformed the grounds of Ravenscroft Palace into a paradise of blooming gardens and verdant lawns that provided the perfect setting for the most significant day in the lives of Margaret, Edmund, and Elizabeth. The wedding morning dawned clear and bright, with early sunshine streaming through the tall windows of the palace and birds singing joyous melodies that seemed to celebrate the union about to take place in the estate's ancient chapel. Elizabeth, now walking steadily and speaking her first clear words, had become the acknowledged darling of everyone at Ravenscroft Palace, her royal heritage evident in every graceful movement and intelligent expression. At 15 months old, she possessed a remarkable vocabulary and demonstrated problem-solving abilities that continued to astonish her devoted caregivers. Mrs. Whitmore often remarked that the princess seemed to understand complex conversations and showed preferences that reflected refined sensibilities far beyond her tender age. Margaret stood before the mirror in her private chambers as her lady's maid Sarah made final adjustments to her wedding ensemble, a creation of ivory silk that had been specially designed for the occasion. The gown featured intricate lacework and pearl embellishments that caught the morning light, while her auburn hair had been arranged in an elaborate style that incorporated family heirloom combs passed down through generations of Ravenscroft women. Her reflection showed a woman transformed by love and purpose, her green eyes bright with happiness that it seemed impossible during the lonely years following her first husband's death. The negotiations with royal authorities during the preceding weeks had resulted in an unprecedented arrangement that satisfied both constitutional requirements and the princess's personal welfare. Sir William Pembroke had returned from London with official documents that formally recognized Princess Charlotte Victoria as a legitimate member of the royal family, while permitting her adoption by Margaret and Edmund, creating a unique situation that balanced royal status with family happiness. Edmund had spent the morning in consultation with the officiating clergyman, ensuring that every detail of the ceremony reflected both the solemnity of their marriage vows and the joy of their union. His dark blue coat had been tailored specifically for the occasion, while his cravat bore a sapphire pin that had belonged to his late father. The transformation in his appearance from scholarly reserve to bridegroom's happiness revealed the profound impact that love and family had made upon his previously solitary existence. The chapel at Ravenscroft Palace, though small, possessed an intimate beauty that made it ideal for their wedding ceremony. Ancient stained glass windows cast colored light across stone floors that had witnessed centuries of family celebrations, while arrangements of spring flowers filled the air with delicate fragrances that enhanced the romantic atmosphere. The guest list had been deliberately limited to immediate family members and closest friends, ensuring privacy while maintaining the dignity appropriate to their social positions. Princess Charlotte Victoria, resplendent in a tiny gown of cream-colored silk with embroidered roses, served as an honorary attendant whose presence symbolized the family unity that had brought Margaret and Edmund together. The child's obvious contentment and affection for both adults demonstrated the success of their unconventional family arrangement, while her natural grace and intelligence promised a bright future regardless of the complex circumstances surrounding her birth and adoption. The ceremony itself reflected both traditional elements and unique circumstances that acknowledged Elizabeth's special status within their family. The clergyman's words emphasized not only the union between husband and wife, but also their shared commitment to providing loving guidance for the remarkable child entrusted to their care. Margaret and Edmund's vows included promises to protect and nurture Elizabeth, while ensuring that she grew up with full knowledge of her heritage and the confidence necessary to navigate her unique position in society. Sir William Pembroke attended the ceremony as the official representative of His Majesty, his presence serving to formalize the royal approval of their marriage and adoption arrangements. His warm congratulations following the exchange of vows indicated genuine satisfaction with the resolution of what had initially appeared to be an insurmountable constitutional crisis. The wedding breakfast took place in the palace's formal dining room, where crystal chandeliers cast sparkling light over tables laden with delicacies prepared by the estate's finest cooks. Speeches celebrated not only the happiness of the bride and groom, but also the remarkable journey that had brought their family together through mystery, investigation, and ultimately love. Elizabeth charmed all the guests with her precocious behavior and obvious affection for her adoptive parents, while her natural poise suggested that she would adapt successfully to whatever challenges her unique heritage might present. During the quiet moments following the formal festivities, Margaret and Edmund found themselves in the palace gardens with Elizabeth, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of gold and rose that seemed to promise unlimited happiness for their future together. The princess played contentedly among the flower beds, her laughter creating music that enhanced the romantic atmosphere of their wedding day. "Do you think she understands the significance of what has happened today?" Margaret asked, watching Elizabeth chase butterflies with the concentrated determination that characterized her approach to every new experience. Edmund's response reflected both his scholarly perspective and his growing paternal affection. "I believe she understands that today represents a new beginning for all of us, and that she is loved and secure within our family. The specific legal and constitutional implications can be explained gradually as she matures and develops the capacity to appreciate such complex matters." Their conversation was interrupted by Harrison's announcement that additional correspondence had arrived from London, bearing royal seals that indicated communications of considerable importance. The documents proved to contain formal recognition of their marriage, along with official appointment of Edmund as Princess Charlotte Victoria's legal guardian, with all the rights and responsibilities that such a position entailed. Most remarkably, the correspondence included a personal letter from His Majesty expressing gratitude for their exceptional care of the princess and requesting that she be raised with full knowledge of her royal heritage while developing the character and capabilities that would serve her well in whatever role she might ultimately choose to play in the monarchy's future. The letter concluded with an invitation for the family to visit the palace when Elizabeth reached her 5th birthday, at which time discussions could begin regarding her future relationship with the royal family and her potential role in the succession. This invitation represented unprecedented recognition of their family's unique status, while ensuring that the princess would have opportunities to understand her heritage and develop relationships with her royal relatives. As evening settled over Ravenscroft Palace, the 3 members of their newly formalized family gathered in the library where their adventure had begun with Edmund's first investigation into the conspiracy that had threatened Elizabeth's safety. The room that had witnessed their initial meeting now served as the setting for their first evening as a legally recognized family, complete with royal blessing and official protection. Elizabeth fell asleep in Margaret's arms as Edmund read aloud from family histories that would help the princess understand her place in the long narrative of English nobility and royal heritage. The peaceful scene represented the fulfillment of dreams that none of them had dared to imagine when the mysterious foundling first appeared at the palace gates more than a year earlier. Their story had evolved from mystery and danger to love and security, creating a family unit that successfully balanced personal happiness with service to the crown and constitutional responsibility. Princess Charlotte Victoria would grow up surrounded by love and opportunity, with parents whose devotion ensured that she would develop into a remarkable woman capable of handling whatever challenges her unique heritage might present. The moonlight streaming through the tall library windows seemed to bless their family as they contemplated a future filled with promise and possibility. Elizabeth's journey from abandoned foundling to acknowledged princess and beloved daughter represented the triumph of love and justice over conspiracy and corruption, while Margaret and Edmund's union demonstrated that true happiness could emerge from the most unexpected circumstances. as they made their way upstairs to begin their new life together, each carrying precious memories of the day that had transformed their individual dreams into shared reality. The ancient halls of Ravenscroft Palace seemed to whisper approval of the love story that had unfolded within its walls. The abandoned baby who had arrived without name or explanation had indeed rewritten the royal lineage. But more importantly, she had created a family bound together by love, purpose, and the unshakable conviction that true nobility lay not in birth alone, but in the courage to protect and nurture those entrusted to their care. The future stretched before them like an unwritten chapter in the ongoing story of English royalty, with Princess Charlotte Victoria destined to play a role that none could yet fully imagine, but all could anticipate with excitement and pride. Their love story had become part of the greater narrative of England itself, proving that even the most carefully guarded royal secrets could not prevent love from finding a way to create new possibilities for happiness and hope. And so concluded the extraordinary tale of the abandoned baby at the royal house gate, whose mysterious arrival had sparked a romance that would be remembered throughout the generations as proof that love could overcome any obstacle, and that families created by choice and devotion could be every bit as strong as those bound by blood alone. In the years to come, Princess Charlotte Victoria would grow into a remarkable woman whose legacy would honor both her royal heritage and the loving family who had given her the foundation necessary to change the world through wisdom, compassion, and the unshakable belief that every child deserves to be cherished and protected, regardless of the circumstances of their birth.